Welcome to the Allo.Capital podcast. If you're just joining us, we are summoning Allo.Capital, a new spinout from Gitcoin that is designed to build the capital allocation layer of the post-tokenization, post-AI internet. There is big upside here. Capital allocation is a multi-trillion-dollar design space. VCs, governments, NGOs, and DAOs all have to allocate capital to solve their problems. But it's also a place where we can start small. Every time you spend money, you're allocating capital. We are threading a through line, partnering with builders, researchers, and funders to figure out what on-chain post-AI capital allocation will look like and building it on-chain. You can learn more by visiting our website at Allo.Capital, where you can download the Allo books for free, play with some of our dApps, join the Telegram, or participate in the Proto DAO. All right, this episode today is about Gitcoin 3.0. For those of you who have been following my career in Web3 over the last 10 years, you know that I'm one of the co-founders of Gitcoin, and Gitcoin has been going through continuous evolution. This week, Gitcoin announced some major changes, including the winding down of its software business, and we are now starting to discuss what I call Gitcoin 3.0. So basically, Gitcoin 1.0 was from 2017 to 2021. 2.0 was from 2021 to 2025. We are now in 2025, and we're talking about what the next 4 years of Gitcoin looks like. So it's been a winding journey, but I'm proud that Gitcoin has always been mission-oriented. Gitcoin has delivered almost $70 million worth of funding to open source software and other public goods in the Ethereum ecosystem. And Gitcoin 3.0 is our most ambitious reset yet in order to figure out how to do that in an ongoing way that meets all the different constituent needs at Gitcoin. I am involved in a few different networks these days. There's the Green Pill Network, there's How to DAO, there's Allo.Capital, and there's Gitcoin. And I think that one of the things that is most interesting to me is how this reset of Gitcoin 3.0 really, well, first off, nothing's official until it's ratified by Gitcoin's governance. Gitcoin's a DAO now, but my vision is basically that Gitcoin becomes a marketplace where capital allocation builders can get distribution for their software by allocating capital to Ethereum's biggest problems. And I'm going to play a Twitter space now that is myself and Mathilda and Rena, who are stewards of Gitcoin, talking about what that could look like going into GG24. If you are a mechanism builder, then this is relevant to you because this is a place that you could get distribution for your software. And, if you're a participant in the Ethereum ecosystem, then you have a stake in Gitcoin because it's designed to help ETH do better. So interesting episode if you're interested in following Gitcoin's evolution and how that affects Allo.Capital and capital allocation. And I think you're going to enjoy it. Next voice you will hear will be Mathilda, myself, and Rena on the Twitter space.
So we're going to be chatting about Gitcoin 3.0 today. We're going to be covering a couple of things, just recapping the recent announcement that was posted end of last week, as well as having a look at the future of what is to come with the Gitcoin grants program as well. And this is supposed to be an open discussion. So if you are interested in joining the discussion, sharing your thoughts, as well as asking any questions, please request to speak. If you don't want to come on stage, the chat is also open. So if anyone wants to ask any questions or just drop thoughts, please pop it into the chat. This is not meant to be, us just speaking at all of you. We really want this to be an open discussion with the public. And with the community. So we also just posted a few posts to the forum that I'm going to be sharing in the chat and that I will also pin to the Jumbotron. So my name is Mathilda. I am the grants program lead here at Gitcoin. I am going to hand it over to Delta Juliet Rena next, just to give a quick intro and then we can get started.
GM, everybody. I am Delta Juliet, Rena O'Brien, Executive Director at Gitcoin. And working alongside Mathilda with the Gitcoin Grants Program.
Hey, I'm Kevin Iwaki. I'm one of the original co-founders of Gitcoin, and I'm excited to talk about the next chapter of Gitcoin, where we've been, where we're going, what the next 5 years looks like. Let's get into it.
Before we look into the future, why don't we discuss the announcement of the wind down of Grants Lab that was announced on Friday. And again, I will be posting all these posts. If you haven't gotten up to speed on the forum or these announcements, I will be posting them in the chat and pinning them. But yeah, Rena, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so for those who have read through the post, a little bit more context. This decision did not come lightly. It did not come swiftly. It might have been a little overdue if I'm being honest. But it was something that I wanted to give ultimate care to and figure out how we can best support our people, the community, Gitcoin's legacy, and then of course, where we go moving forward. And so myself and Owaki and Meg, who's leader of the business unit, had started this discussion a while back, trying to make sure that we were doing right by all three of those things. And as the market continued to market, and we saw the work that was getting put into all the amazing things that we've been creating at GrantStack, we tried to figure out which way the ship should be steering, for lack of a better term, or at the very least being guided. And at the end of the day, coming to the decision that the program itself is really the ethos of Gitcoin, and where we were placing bets for the technology side of it and what we were looking for revenue was just something that I personally felt that that bet itself wasn't strong enough to ensure that I could take care of the community and the legacy and then the people that had built everything at the same time, which is what brought us to the decision that was announced last week. We don't come by it lightly. I'm not going to do the whole, like, we're not a family. Y'all do not need to be my family and you can tell me to F off. But big love to all the work that everybody has put into the grants technology over the last few years. And I think just the grace that everyone's handled everything and the support the affected contributors have been giving has been just phenomenal. So really, really appreciate it and all y'all. So anything else I should touch on, Mathilda or Waki?
I don't think so. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, Owaki, before we go into what the next chapter is going to look like?
I really appreciate everyone who contributed to Gitcoin in the 1.0 and 2.0 days. And I know that it hasn't been an easy ride for any of us. It hasn't been an easy ride for me. And I just want to say thank you to the people who poured their hearts and souls into Gitcoin and earnestly were trying to make it work. I think that it's been painful in the last few weeks to sort of come to grips with where we are in the market and where the market is going, and to say goodbye to some friends. And I'm excited about boldly going into the future and in turning this corner, but just want to recognize the amazing work that's gone into Gitcoin so far. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for that sentiment as well, Owaki. Definitely has not been an easy time. These shifts are never easy. But that brings us to the next point, which I know a lot of the community, since we announced the announcements, a lot of people have reached out, and I've just been overwhelmed by the support as well from the community through this transition. So thank you, for everyone for your support and, following us along on this journey. One of the things as well is that what's next, because we're doubling down on the Gitcoin grants program. And for those of you who were wondering, no, GG is not going anywhere. In fact, we are doubling down on it. So it's going to look a little different, but we are still really committed to funding public goods within Ethereum. And it's going to look a little, like I said, it's going to look a little different as well. So we just wrapped up. We are actually busy wrapping up GG23. So we're kind of in this transition as we're wrapping up GG23, which is our latest round. It's the first round that we went into a multi-mechanism structure as well. We are probably going to be finalizing the round and doing all the payouts by the end of next week. But that being said, we are still going to iterate and we're still going to take a retrospective of this round, see what worked, see what didn't, and that will still continue to inform the next round in GG24. So a lot of people have asked, well, what's happening? Because GrantStack, which is the software that the program has run on for the past few years, will also be sunsetting. We're going to get into a little bit of that as well and exactly what that is going to look like, but kind of at a high level, just wanted to let everyone know that we have Owaki and I posted some posts on the forum about what the structure could look like moving forward. Really, this is an open discussion with the community. We want to build this out with you. Definitely expect a lot more community led spaces to, to drive us and to guide us into this future, this next chapter, what we're calling Gitcoin 3.0. GG24 will happen as planned. It is going to be pushed back slightly. So it's going to happen a little bit later in the year to give us some more time. But in between then, we are planning on activating the community and activating our builders through a bunch of different activation, so to speak, or contest. So we're going to get everyone to build this with us, to iterate with us, kind of like I mentioned as well. So from a GG point of view, high level, that is what we're looking at right now. The structure of the program is also going to shift a little bit. But before we get into that, maybe I will throw it over to you, Owaki, to kind of maybe can you give us a rundown of kind of like the evolution that Gitcoin has gone through? You call it Gitcoin 1.0, 2.0, and now it's 3.0. And yeah, I know you've got this composting 2.0 metaphor as well. Would you like to just guide us through there in your thinking there?
Yeah, happy to. So I think that Gitcoin's always had a mission or a North Star around funding open source software, and that's evolved into different forms. We've stated it as growing open source in the early days, and then we evolved it into build and fund public goods, and then lately we've been saying the mission is fund what matters, and so I've always been proud that Gitcoin's mission we've always been oriented towards the mission. We've refined the articulation of it over time, but it's always been about sort of funding what matters. Originally, what matters to Gitcoin was open source software, and so we've always been dogmatic about that mission. But I think we've been very pragmatic about how we approach that mission. And in the early days of Gitcoin, when I first launched it in 2017, it was a bounty platform. And we explored bounties and hackathons and NFTs, and we even had an ad network for a couple of years. In 2020, we landed on grants and quadratic funding, and sort of just have always been evolving the tactics that we try to reach our mission of funding what matters and funding open source. And that's been a constant evolution in the products and the tactics that we use. And very reductionistly, I think that you can say that there's three eras of Gitcoin. The Gitcoin 1.0 era was a centralized company that was exploring this design space. The Gitcoin 2.0 era from 2021 to 2025 was all about quadratic funding and trying to turn that centralized platform into a decentralized protocol that did quadratic funding. And the next era, Gitcoin 3.0, I think that we're sort of hitting the reset button and are setting up for the next cycle, 2025 to 2030. And so I see a lot of ongoing evolution with how Gitcoin has approached the problems and market set that it's positioned to be solved. And the Ethereum space moves so fast and technology moves so fast that I think that a repositioning for this era is definitely necessary. And support. I appreciate everyone who's supported us along the way to get here, but the evolution and the journey certainly isn't over. Excited to learn from Gitcoin 2.0, to compost all of the different lessons and structures that we tried but didn't work, and to break those down and use them as nutrients for the 3.0 era. There's a post on the Gitcoin governance forum where I've invited everyone to take what you've learned, and if you feel comfortable sharing it on the governance forum, check out that Composting Gitcoin 2.0 post, because I think that there's a lot of great lessons that we've learned over the last couple of years, and they're going to inform the journey going forward. I think that about covers it. Back to you, Mathilda.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about the future? Why don't we talk about what Gitcoin 3.0, what we see that look like? I pinned the two posts that Owaki and I posted to the forum this morning. It is a high level overview of the strategy and the future that we see, not only with where Gitcoin is going, but the overall kind of like what is it going to mean for our community, for our builders, for anyone who's engaging with us, from if you're a round operator running rounds, if you're a software builder, if you're yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity here. Why don't you give us an overview?
Great. So I think that we're still figuring it out is the answer. And I'm about to tell you what I think it should be. But I just want to say that, I'm happy to be a sense maker and to try to channel intelligence to the network to the best of my ability. but Gitcoin still is a DAO. And so none of this is official until it's ratified by governance. And we do still use Gitcoin GTC governance, and the Gov forum is where that happens. But in order to make it legible and accessible to people, we're doing these Twitter spaces to sort of like explain the design trade-offs to anyone. Anyway, that preamble aside, my vision for Gitcoin 3.0 is to make it into a funding festival for Ethereum's biggest problems. I think in very broad strokes, the Gitcoin treasury, there's $11 million in the matching pool, which will be allocated to Ethereum's biggest problems, to what we call public goods. And then there's $11 million in the DAO. That's a combination of ETH, GTC, and stables. And so I think that Gitcoin has it's not an endowment in the traditional sense, but there is like a financial endowment here that I think is interesting that we can spend on Ethereum's biggest problems. And I think there's a lot of problems in Ethereum right now. There's UX, there's fragmentation, there's how are we going to solve the adoption problem. And, I know there's other smart entities that are working on that. And I think that Gitcoin can complement the sort of like organizational hierarchy of the Ethereum Foundation, the sort of like technocratic genius that comes out of the Ethereum Foundation, with a more networked focus structure for identifying and solving Ethereum's biggest problems. And so, I'm really network pilled these days. And so what are the ways in which we can channel the networks of Ethereum communities to solve app adoption and UX and other problems that if we identify the biggest problems and allocate capital to them, whether with quadratic funding or retro funding or deep funding, any other means, in what ways can we turn Gitcoin into a Schelling point for identifying and solving Ethereum's biggest problems using network-based collective intelligence and sense making? And so I'm really excited about this vision of helping Ethereum. Ethereum has helped us. We are born of Ethereum, and we're by and for the Ethereum community. And I think that for this next arc, really focusing on accelerating Ethereum and helping it win against more centralized alt layer ones is where I would like to go. And so I see there basically being a cycle where every GG round we do sense making, we identify the biggest problems, and then we make those into domains of which there will be funding amounts that are allocated to them. I could imagine in GG24, we'd have 400K for OSS builders to support them, 200K for improving the UX of Ethereum, 200K for reducing fragmentation, and 300K for accelerating adoption. And then once we have those domains set aside, we can have people bid on those domains in order to allocate funding. And it's up to the people who are bidding to say, oh, we want to do quadratic funding or retro funding or deep funding or mechanism X that's never been, even invented before. So, I think that going through this cycle of sense making and then setting aside these domains and then doing proposals and then executing and then learning, we're basically going to enter this cycle in which we're iterating towards solving Ethereum's biggest problems by going through this loop of traversing the design space of these biggest problems and figuring out how to allocate capital against them. And I'm really excited about a world where there's no one party that has a monopoly on how we allocate the capital. I think competition creates better allocation, and much love to Grants Lab and its predecessors. But I think that there was no competitive pressure to explore things outside of what Grants Lab could do. And Grants Lab did many things right, and I think there's many things that it was not able to do. But by bringing to bear a network-based structure where these teams are competing to allocate against each other, I think we're going to have a more pluralistic exploration of the design space and be able to channel more network intelligence towards Ethereum's biggest problems. And my hope is that we're going to solve Ethereum's biggest problems, and we're going to bootstrap a network of people who are building capital allocation software that solve problems in a network first way. And this is going to be a core strength of Ethereum. No other blockchain has the ability to solve public goods problems and network intelligence problems in a pluralistic way, the way that Ethereum does. And I think that that's going to set us up for the last pillar of my vision, which is financial longevity. So basically figuring out how do we raise more money for the funding pools. There was this dynamic in GG23 where we had matching on matching on matching, where I think the total amount for GG23 was like 1.2 million, but Gitcoin's treasury only put up like half of that. It was like Cello and like other partners that were allocating to the matching pool. And so if we can create this fulcrum where funding compounds on funding, we're going to increase the longevity of Gitcoin and bring to bear more people who are helping to solve Ethereum's ongoing problems. And so raising more money for the matching pool, ongoing treasury management, having a very low burn, and maybe eventually we'll start making strides where we gain upside in things in the Ethereum ecosystem or add more GTC utility from there. And that's the final component of the vision. So anyway, that's maybe like 3 minutes on where I think that we should go. Again, this is just my opinion. It's up to governance to ratify any of these changes. And if you want to learn more about my vision, just click my profile and check the most recent article I've composed on Twitter, which is entitled "My Vision for Gitcoin 3.0, a funding festival for Ethereum's biggest problems." So if you check out that article, that's the way I think we should go. Anything that brings up for you, Mathilda, let me know. I'm also happy to answer questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. And just to circle back, the matching pool did put in 1.2 into GD23. Anything over and beyond that was matched by external parties. Yeah, this is super exciting. And I think it is a really powerful moment, for us to do a really big reset. We kind of started this momentum already with GG23, like at the end of last year, we looked at the program. I started doing a lot of research within the community as well as talking to a lot of builders and just finding out, I'm really looking at the builder level as well. So really going to the builders that are solving a lot of these problems already and figuring out what they need and what the best way and what the best way is to support them in a more valuable way. Because what we realize, specifically if we're talking about mechanisms, what we realized is that, yes, we pioneered quadratic funding and we've ran 23 quadratic funding rounds now, but it isn't a one-size-fits-all mechanism. So that's the reason why we moved into this multi-mechanism approach in GG23, where we also introduced retro funding for more mature builders. And for our more decentralized part of our program, the community rounds, we really told them the sky's the limit. In the past, we used to have this rule or this eligibility criteria that anyone wanting to run a community round needed to run it on our tech stack. But we scrapped that for GG23 and we saw so many experiments coming through because something that is really important to me is that if we are going to be empowering other round operators in their ecosystem to fund what matters most to them and within their ecosystem, we need to give them the autonomy to figure out how exactly they want to do that. It shouldn't be up to us to dictate, you need to run this on quadratic funding, et cetera, et cetera. DMs with a few round operators that asked me about this, and I was like, listen, run it the way that makes the most amount of sense to fund what you're trying to fund. And that's what I'm really excited about with this next iteration is that we're really thinking out of the box now. And I've been saying it since I think GG22 or maybe earlier, but I have always been wanting to see the program move into a more categorical structure where we are funding very specific categories, for instance, within OSS. And we're becoming a lot more tactical and a lot more specific with what we're funding. So that's what I'm really excited about, the sense making that you mentioned, Owaki. If I also have a post on the forum and it has a bit of like the tactical things that is going to happen leading up to GG24, as well as like what this, the cycle could look like. And that sense making piece is really exciting because this is going to give us another step to sense make within the community and within the ecosystem with everyone to figure out, okay, what are the categories that we should fund in the next round? And this is way more community led. It's not us doing like a top down decision making process. We're really taking the community along with us. So I'm very excited about that. Exactly what this is going to look like. We're gonna start rolling out like more tactical things over the next few weeks, but we really want to get a sense of where the community is also sitting at. So if you have comments, if you've got ideas, if you've got pushback, if you've got anything to share, please go to the forum and drop your thoughts there. Our DMs are also open as well. Feel free to also request to speak on the stage in the space, or just drop your questions in the comments as well. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of big changes that are being suggested and proposed, but I believe that this is a really powerful shift within the program. I have been wanting to see a kind of a shift like this for a while, especially what I mentioned, on getting more specific about the categories that we fund at any given time. So, I'm curious, Rena, what I'm going to throw it back over to you. What are you excited about looking forward? And is there anything that we didn't touch on that we probably should have touched on?
Thanks, Mathilda. Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think are important for the community to know as we're coming together and working through what the program is and what it could be and where we're going. One thing that we do tend to get a little myopic on is focusing on the next round versus the round 10 years from now. Maybe not that far. I don't think it's prudent to think that far in the future in this industry, but thinking about the program and how it grows, nurturing it the same way that you would a kid, right? Like, hey, this is going to be the next iteration of what we're doing. But what do we do for GG25 and how could those fit in with each other without over processizing it? I love saying that word. Um, and the other one is, I guess, just to kind of touch on exactly what you and Iwaki have just said. I think that some of the strengths that lie within what we've had at Gitcoin is that desire and that love to innovate, as well as trying to figure out a structure. Do we go a little far? I think Rohit had actually posted this on the forum. Have we gone a little bit too ambidextrous in both of these ways? Yes. Is it in my blood as a former chief of staff to try and figure out what the common ground is for everyone? Absolutely. And I think that there's a world in which the Cathedral and the Bazaar are working in conjunction and being the Iwaki's word, Shelling point for some of these problems, I think is really important. But just like a Bazaar out in the real world would actually have some structure and ways that we can do it so that people can wayfind and people can find the Cathedral and the Bazaar is important as well. And so there's that. And I think that there's also the version that sometimes worries me, which is if you've heard me talk or soapbox, maybe around the fire pit, many hands definitely make light work, but they also make a ton of navel gazers. And having a whole bunch of conversations circling around some of the ways that we should be going does not necessarily mean that we're going to be going in the right direction. And so I think that there's some work to be done there and some ways that we can sense make in order to drive the program as well as Gitcoin well into the future to continue being one of the longest running grants, public goods funding, and maybe one day like one of the best funded ones, I think is really important. And that's what I'm really excited about. I think there's a ton of opportunity here. I don't necessarily know if I agree that it's specifically like open source software or solving problems in the Ethereum ecosystem, because I don't think that those are always going to be the biggest problems, but I could be wrong. Like we have over the years evolved from we don't have climate rounds anymore. That's kind of a huge fucking problem. But is it one that we want to solve? And we decided no, it wasn't. But I don't know if that's going to come back on the menu in the future. And so figuring out ways that the community can contribute without having the loudest voices drive the ship or steer us towards where we're going, but having everybody contribute and help us be at the front of the sense making, I think is really important. And some of the ways that we've been ideating how to do that with the community is going to be really cool too.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I also believe, we've kind of discussed this already a little bit, but that sense making that we're talking about, that framework I think is going to be pretty important to establish that, that we'll be using for every round. And I'm excited to start building that out and see what that's going to look like. And yeah, 100%, I agree with you. We need to not look just at the next round. I think that was historically what we did for a really long time. Just let's just do what we do because it's what we've always done. But really starting to look a little bit further into the future for sure. And it's, yeah, we might not be able to look 10 years into the future, but we can definitely think about, okay, well, if we're moving into this direction now, where do we want to be in 2026 or 2027? And
Totally.
yeah. And the longevity and the sustainability of the program is always top of mind for me as well. And that's a really big piece. There's a lot of pieces to this. Like Awaki also mentioned, we're still figuring it out. And, but I'm excited about the future. And I think there's still some things that we will be figuring out. And that's what we're here for as well, to continue serving our community, to continue funding the builders, and just to continue doing what we're doing, just in really new and innovative ways. I remember when we first broached the multi-mechanism approach, we had a lot of people, there was a little bit of backlash around that, like, oh, it's going to be too complicated, it's going to be too much, but it really was time to evolve the program in a really big way, and we're in another era of that right now. It's time to like rethink how we do things. So yeah, I'm curious, Awaki, if there's anything else that has come to mind for you through this discussion.
I think for me, I'm focused on the path between here and GG24. So I mean, that's the direction I'd love to talk about next. Is that okay, Mathilda?
Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, I think that GG24, if I recall, is scheduled for late summer, early fall. And I think that that might be a moving target as we figure out exactly what are Ethereum's biggest problems and what are the ones that we want to see domains allocated to solve against those problems. But I'll tell you where I'm focused, figuring out exactly what are Ethereum's biggest problems and how can on-chain capital allocation start to identify and sense make and solve against them. So I have my own personal opinions and I can put them into the arena. But first, I think we sort of have to define the arena of what are these what are these problems and how do we how do we sense make as a community around what they are, and then how do we cohere around what they're going to be. So creating that sort of arena where we discuss with leaders in the Ethereum community what are the biggest problems and what are the pilots that we want to run, I think is going to be a conversation with people like Devansh, with people that are leaders at the Ethereum Foundation, with Carl Cravone from OSO and Jonas from retro funding. I'm sort of name dropping a little bit here, but it's to give you an idea of like the type of constituents that I think that we should really be in dialogue with. And I envision that in the next couple months, we're going to cohere around a couple different domains. Let's say their OSS funding and app layer adoption, and maybe, I don't know, maybe we find some way that we can add value to the reduction of fragmentation or something like that. I didn't, you know, I'm not convinced that, Gitcoin can add a lot of value there, but I do think it's one of Ethereum's biggest problems. Maybe espresso systems and like Justin Drake with his vision for base rollup is better equipped to solve that, but we can help around the edges by in some network-based way. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm imagining in 2 or 3 months, we're going to decide what the domains are for GG24. And I imagine that we'll be going to the Ethereum community and saying, hey, there's 500K for open source software. There's 300K for app layer adoption. There's 300K for Ethereum localism / like adoption. And then basically what we start to do is we accept applications from round operators who want to do either quadratic funding or deep funding or retro funding or intense-based funding or deep governance. There's a bunch of different ways that we can allocate capital against these needs. And I think that in a couple months, we'll start accepting proposals against how we can solve these problems together. And a couple months after that, we'll actually execute GG24, and we will do it imperfectly, but it will happen, and we will learn from that. And then we will begin iterating and solving for those learnings in GG25, which I'm assuming will be in like Q1 of next year. So that's what I think the path is between now and GG24. And my first priority is making sure that we cohere and sense make around what those problems are. And then I'm here to support if for like I would really love it if someone stepped up and like, assuming we do a quadratic funding platform again, which by the way, that's up to the GTC stewards to decide or not. Like I would love to see other people step up and build a QF platform that replaces Grant Stack that's that's oriented around 2025 style UX and needs in the community. But like if no one steps up, I kind of feel like I'm holding the bag to help put that together, to orchestrate it, or to put together a team. So I think that like there's a role that we can play, and if there's anything that's falling through the cracks, we can catch it. But my first priority would be to find and empower another team that wants to do that kind of stuff. So I know it's a little bit of a meandering thought on how we get from now to GG24. Matilda, I think you're as close to this as me. What's your reaction to that, and anything that you want to accent or emphasize of anything I said, or push back on also? Let me know.
I think what I envision as well, for sure, we need to start that sense making. That is definitely going to be part of the flow that gets us to GG24. The other piece as well that you can read in my forum post as well is kind of thinking around how we can get the community to build a lot of these features with us. What exactly that's going to look like and like what we're going to need specifically is still TBD. There's some ideas that are thrown out onto the forum, but I would love to see some sort of like GG design contests. So for instance, I've always been really bullish on bringing in maybe some more AI agents into the program to automate things more where we can. So that could be a contest. And bringing the community in to test things with us until we get to GG24. My concern, of course, is that there's going to be a bigger gap between GG23 and GG24, which is going to mean that it's a bigger gap with funding. So how I'm trying to look at this, and I'm trying to view this is like, okay, well, we're in like a really big shift right now and we're rebuilding, but how can we still fund and engage and like bring our builders along with us, without, I don't want it to be a case of like, well, okay, check back in a few months, like, no, let's do this together, and that's why I'm quite bullish on having some sort of GG contest, design contest, or some whatever we're going to call it, however it's going to look. But that's kind of what I'm thinking of there as well. And yeah, I would say that, we said this with GG23 as well. Every time we do a really big shift and we flip things on its head a little bit, it's never going to be perfect. But yeah, I'm really excited also to just take the learnings that we got from GG23 to also inform the next round in GG24. Of course, GG24 is going to look really different to GG23, but I think it's still really valuable to take stock and and to take those learnings into the next round. Getting feedback from our builders and from our community. And one of the things I also just want to call out is that I understand that the community might be nervous for switching software. Again, we did this. If you've been around Gitcoin for a while, we did a really big transition. I think it was in 2023 from our old C grants platform to GrantStack. And whenever a shift like that happens, I just want to call out that it is a big adjustment. But what's really top of mind to me is making sure that that experience and whatever goes into that is as seamless for our builders as well as our round operators, and our donors moving forward. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone, yeah, doing this with us and giving us feedback along the way. It's going to be really valuable. So yeah, I think that's one thing. It's going to give us a bit of time to to build this along with the community as well. Yeah, I'm just having a look at any questions that have been dropped in the chat. And just a reminder, we've got about like 15 minutes left. So if anyone wants to come up, and if you've got like a burning idea that you want to share, please just request to speak and come up on stage and join in on the conversation.
One of the questions that was asked, Mathilda, was how many people are still at Gitcoin? The answer to that is myself and Mathilda as of right now. I believe there was a follow-up as well about, is that planning to change? And if I may, Mathilda, put words in your mouth, our mouths, which is, the answer is yes, but subject towards how we can best support the structure of the program moving forward. So that'll be the continued focus. as it stands right now. And then as things start to emerge, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for Gitcoin to rebuild from first principles in some of the things that we were successful for in a much leaner and more innovative way, but doing it a little bit more in public, more alongside the community, and more, I guess, from a scarcity mindset in the ways that it's good to have.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I also saw that question. Thanks for picking that one up. Monty, welcome to the stage, sir. So nice of you to join us.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? I'm in a park in London, so I'm not sure how good my signal is, but I've been, yes, getting thumbs up. Yeah, really appreciating the space. Super interesting to hear the evolving dynamics. And yeah, it was definitely quite a big shock to read the news. And, I've been digesting it more and more, but actually it's now sort of starting to feel, like exciting and possibilities, and certainly listen to this space as well. So yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about and could be really interesting to explore, and like Kevin mentioned, this round with the introduction of grant ships and the Cello matching on matching could be a really interesting thing to double down on, and a way to maybe like complement the matching funds that Gitcoin already has. So maybe Cello comes forward with a few grant programs, Optimism does, Regen Coordination manages a cluster of rounds. That could be really interesting model, and be cool to see like how grant ships and various kind of ways of getting rounds and things competing with each other and optimizing would be awesome. And yeah, the other thing that's on my mind is I'm really loving the experiments going on around DeepGov, and personally have been doing an experiment with Impact QF. Really excited about how the combination of AI plus deep and structured impact reporting can really complement the QF mechanism, and still kind of get the benefits of the crowdfunding, additional funds raised, and community signal, but then amplified by like actual data on both on-chain data for like blockchain ecosystem impact, but then also the real world impact on whatever thing that you're trying to fund. And then there's just the ability of AI and various agents to like just radically improve the quality and experience of the whole program, from like providing super detailed feedback to grantees about, where they did well, where they could have done better. Just seems to even better align the incentives of what the funding is trying to do. So yeah, I guess all of those things are seeming really exciting. And I'm wondering now, with Grant Stack kind of winding down, which is an interesting one. It's both both love and hate Grant Stack. I think spent a lot of time both as a grantee and an operator. But yeah, just looking at what's being built with DeepGov to kind of automate some of the Impact QF stuff that I've mentioned. Obviously, we've got Mahesh and KarmaGap on the call. So I think that could be some really interesting builds in that direction. And yeah, there's various development teams like Collectivo Labs and the KarmaGap team and the DeepGov team that I think could all bring together some really interesting experiments. But yeah, so those are some of my thoughts. Thanks for having me up on stage. Appreciate everything that Gitcoin has done and is doing. And yeah, just really grateful to be part of this community.
Yeah, thanks for that, Monty. Yeah, I think the next era is definitely going to be filled with a lot more experimentation, and I'm excited about that. We already started with it in GG23, like you mentioned. That's why I was really excited to introduce grant ships into GG23 for the community rounds. We what I was really excited about there as well is that it does create that iterative approach. So every time a community round runs, there's a competitive aspect to it, and it also incentivizes community rounds, to set really clear goals and to reach those goals within their rounds. We started very simply in GG23, so really excited to see that iterate and evolve in GG24. And it's just a much clearer way of also tracking the impact of these rounds, because that's one of the things that we struggled with, for our OSS program that Gitcoin has always managed and run. It's easy for us to, because obviously, like we're running those rounds. So tracking the impact and tracking the data from those rounds is really, it's easy for us, and it's something that we own. But one of the things that we started struggling with was the community rounds. We wanted to see, what kind of impacts are these rounds bringing? Where can we even support them more? And that's something that I'm still really bullish on. We just didn't have a lot of resources and a lot of time for this in GG23 because we were also changing so much. But it's something that I've been saying a lot, is that how can we also, as we're moving it, especially when we're moving into this new structure, how can we set up funnels and structures where we are educating our community and educating round operators and just supporting grantees and everyone, part that's going to be part of GG in the future in a much more seamless way. So I know you and I, Monty, we briefly spoke about this in Denver earlier this year as well, is that and this is something that I've been thinking of for a while, is the further decentralization of the program as well. And that's something that you mentioned, is that uh, like you mentioned, region coordination could take a cluster of rounds and then own that. So very exciting to see that come about. And yeah, would be really interesting to see also the engagement that we get from the community as we're kind of expanding this decentralized community-led nature. There are a few things on like the operations side and exactly what the OSS program is going to look like moving forward that we're still noodling on. But yeah, all in all, pretty exciting. I don't know if there's anything else that anyone else wants to add. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I will check if there's any other questions as well. Yeah, so I think that as we're closing out the space, just a reminder that we're going to be releasing a lot of things that are going to be kind of next steps. We released some really high level visions today onto the forum. So I would, again, just encourage everyone to go and join in on the discussion. If you see something you like, tell us. If you see something you don't, let us know. And like Rena said as well, we want to include the community in this as well. But you can also still trust us to guide and shepherd us into a really solid future and into GG24. So next steps, high level, are going to be the sense making, as well as figuring out some ways to bring the community along with us, kind of what I mentioned through the, like, it could be like GG design contests or whatever we're going to call that, or whatever we're going to do there. And then GG24 will be our next round. That means we'll only be running 2 rounds this year. Also just thinking of implications of funding and all of that as well. That is not something that has, that I personally have forgotten about. I know that one of the strengths of the GG program has always been that it has given our builders a consistent funding. I don't see a future where we ever go back to quarterly programs like we did a few years ago. Maybe it's 3 rounds a year, maybe it's 2 big rounds a year, but just making sure that whatever structure we move towards is still supporting the builders that come to the program in a meaningful way. So that is something that is also really top of mind for me. And then some next steps is just going to be rolling all of this out, having the discussion with the community, and there'll probably be a few more like forum posts, but also just more spaces like this where we could actually just get real time with leaders in the space as well, to build this out together. But yeah, if there's nothing else, anything else that you want to add, Owaki or Rena, before we close out?
Please read my posts. I put a lot of thought into it. It's been a long journey for the last 8 years. I know that it's a page and a half long. I know it takes 7 minutes to read, and that's too long for Twitter. But I've been doing this for 8 years, and I really want to include you all in the next stage of the journey. It's my vision for Gitcoin 3.0. And again, I want to end by just saying everyone who contributed to the Gitcoin journey, either as a contributor, as a grantee, as a contributor to Grants Lab, or any of its predecessors, as a contributor to the centralized company, I appreciate you. Thank you for your contributions, and looking forward to composting Gitcoin 2.0 and figuring out 3.0 with all of you all. And my hope is that we do a Twitter space after GG24, and you guys are like, fuck yes, we worked on some of Ethereum's biggest problems and prototyped some badass capital allocation mechanisms in order to do so. So thanks so much for the journey so far, and read my post, get me feedback, and as GG24 takes shape, I'm sure we'll be in touch again.
Alrighty. Well, yeah, thanks, Owaki. Yeah, guys, we've got a lot of reading to do. Go read my post as well. But yeah, it's been I just want to say as well, I've been a Gitcoin now. Oh man, I think I'm like the longest. I think I'm like a Gitcoin veteran now. I've been here for almost 3 years. And, I've gone through quite a few of these iteration cycles, especially with the program, and just being so close to the program and what I do, I just still hold a huge passion for what we're doing at Gitcoin with the Gitcoin grants program. So I'm really excited about this future, and yeah, building it in a much more community-led way. It is an honor to serve this community in the way that I do, and yeah, I'm excited about this next phase. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We know there's a lot of big changes coming, and there's a lot of things to navigate right now. But as always, we always do our very best to guide you through these new navigation waters, and just keep an eye out for next steps. Join the conversation on the forum. And yeah, there's going to be some more things rolling out, as well as we're still busy finalizing GG23. So our OSS program retro round results should be posted to the forum pretty soon as well. And all the grantees that participated in either retro or quadratic funding should be paid out by next week. So yeah, we're still also just in the middle of finalizing all of that. And then we'll also be posting a full retrospective of how the round went as well. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks, everyone. And I hope you all have a good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Thanks, everyone.
Peace and love. Goodbye. All right. We just heard from the Gitcoin community, myself, Rena, Mathilda, and others talking about Gitcoin 3.0. And I'm excited about the direction that Gitcoin is going, sad about where we've been and the people we have to say goodbye to, but I'm excited about the possible path forward. Thanks again for listening to the Allo.Capital podcast, powered by Green Pill Network, powered by Gitcoin, powered by Ethereum. This podcast features the people who are building the capital allocation layer of the post-AI, post-tokenization internet. Disclaimer, this podcast episode is for informative purposes only and is not financial advice. Do your own research. Do not make any financial decisions based on these posts. In addition, I own crypto assets like ETH, USDC, and GTC. All right, I think this was a fun episode for talking about the future of on-chain post-AI capital allocation. And I think the future of Gitcoin is something that I am really interested in stimulating a conversation about. So I hope this was informative to you. If you have any feedback, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.